There are two clear Super Bowl favorites in the AFC, but if you want a dark horse, look no further than the AFC North. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today, as I am every Tuesday, by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the disaster in Dallas at the end of that game. We're going to give you some Super Bowl dark horse candidates in the NFC, but we'll start in the AFC. Before we dive into it, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Lauren, we obviously have the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs at the top of the AFC, but looking at a dark horse candidate, I think mine wears black and yellow in the AFC North.
See, for me, I like the Baltimore Ravens and the reigning MVP to at least get back to the AFC Championship game.
Well, it's certainly a possibility, and my guy Kevin Ostreicher from Locked On Ravens talked about where the Ravens are right now in the thought of that Super Bowl dream.
First of all, I think, Kyle Hamilton was very real and very candid about what was going on with the Ravens. He did kind of hint that, it's a different type of season this year. And first of all, he didn't make excuses for the record, says, yeah, the record shows that the Ravens have 5 losses, we have 5 losses, and not going to make excuses for that. But he did say that he still feels like the Ravens have a good chance to win the Super Bowl. And I don't disagree. I mean, I think the Ravens do have a shot to win the Super Bowl. I don't think they can win it playing like they are now and having the vibes they have now. I think that stuff does have to get ironed out over the bye week. But I think this is a much more wide open AFC or wide open just NFL in general than it is almost being made out to be. So I'm not saying that Baltimore is playing Super Bowl football right now. They're not. I'd be the first to tell you. I think a lot of people will be the first to tell you that. But the last hope, the last-ditch effort for this team could be maybe the bye week can fix some things.
Lauren, do you think the bye week is going to fix some things for the Baltimore Ravens?
I do. I think it's a nice opportunity for them to hit pause and reset a little bit with a veteran coaching staff like this. And to me, I think playoff experience together matters so much, that this core in Baltimore, when they get into the postseason, it's not like, yes, Pittsburgh gets there every year, but they haven't really been on a run, and not with this team, with Russell Wilson. It's this quarterback with these guys all working together. And some of the other teams, I think the Ravens are just as likely to be in the AFC Championship game as Buffalo or Kansas City. And then it just comes down to that one game, and anything can happen in one game that can get Baltimore to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think right now you look at the Baltimore Ravens and you'll probably have to run the football with consistency in the playoffs. And do we trust Baltimore? Or do we trust Pittsburgh to do that? You think Derrick Henry might make that difference for the Ravens this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think where the argument starts to skew a little bit is the defense, where that's the concern about Baltimore. We're not used to having concerns about Baltimore's defense, but I just like that this group can kind of band together here and find ways, maybe get a little bit healthier and find some different ways to attack offenses. But I think Pittsburgh's got the level up there where if they can just sort of keep it ugly and low scoring like we saw when these two teams played earlier this season, maybe that's the difference maker. But we'll see them match up again in 2 weeks.
Yeah, obviously the Ravens have some more explosive options on the offensive side of the ball. But to me, you mentioned the defense, and that's really where I lean Pittsburgh Steelers as my dark horse Super Bowl candidate. I think if it's not the Bills and it's not the Chiefs, I could see the Pittsburgh Steelers being that team. And like you said, the defense is really where I think they can make plays in the playoffs when the games do slow down. The offenses don't have to shoot them out. But if you do have to get into a shootout, for the first time in such a long time, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers can operate in that way. Now, the run game Can it be consistent enough? That is what I'm worried about with the Steelers. But Russell Wilson being able to hit these shot plays, I think it makes a difference. And my guy, Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers, talked about how this Pittsburgh Steelers team, for the first time in forever, feels like a complete football team.
The Steelers have positioned themselves to maybe, with the Bills' loss, and remember they play the Lions next week. That's going to be a huge game of the week type of game. With that, the Steelers might be in position to grab the 2 seed, and if the Chiefs can drop one game outside of the Steelers game, the Steelers would control their own destiny to get the 1 seed in this conference. That's pretty crazy when you think about it. Like to think about the Steelers, winning the division seemed like it was, ridiculous. It was out of hand. It was just poppycock. It was just noise. It was Steelers fans being crazy. To win the AFC North this year with the Browns and the Ravens and the Bengals, there was just no way they could do it. And now they're in the driver's seat to do it. And they have a decent shot at being a 2 seed, maybe even a 1 seed with the way things have played out.
That is pretty crazy for the Steelers, considering where they were coming into the year. So with that sort of confidence, with that sort of explosive ability on offense, with the passing game now, and then the quality of their defense, that even though, TJ Watt hasn't statistically had the best year ever, but they have so much depth on the pass rush right now that I trust the Steelers more than I trust the Ravens. Am I crazy to feel that way?
I don't think you're crazy to feel that way right now, but I am curious how that feeling is 4 weeks from now. Like when we get into the playoffs, of course, the Steelers have a better record and will probably win that division. But the next few games for Pittsburgh are at the Eagles, at the Ravens, and at home against the Chiefs. We'll know after those 3 games, are the Steelers legitimately going to be able to go toe-to-toe with these top playoff teams? Or have they been beating up on a lighter rest of the bottom of the division? They've played some other lesser teams, both New York teams and the Raiders on their schedule. Like, I don't know that they've been super, super battle tested up to this point.
Well, they did beat the Ravens, and then they beat the Commanders as well. So it's not like the Green Bay Packers where they have no good wins to point to. I mean, they at least have – the Packers have the Texans. I guess you can call that a good win, but it's certainly not as good as the Commanders or the Ravens, in my opinion. But, yeah, these matchups coming up for the Steelers will make a big difference. My thing is, even if they lose one of those games, I like if they were to lose to the Chiefs, I wouldn't feel like having them as my dark horse pick was any worse. You lose games to good teams. That's the kind of losses that you want. It's not like you're going to go undefeated. So I wouldn't be rattled about the Steelers there, but with that explosive ability in the passing game now, and they didn't even have George Pickens last week when they beat the Browns. So I trust the Steelers coaching. I trust the defense. I trust Russell Wilson having a couple of big plays a game. And I think that might be enough to give him a shot at a run.
Do you know when the last time it was Russell Wilson threw a pass in a playoff game?
2017?
2020. So it hasn't been that, or 20.
Okay.
It hasn't been that long. But yes, he's got the experience in the back belt. But I do wonder if a little bit of this Russell Wilson fountain of youth will start to wear off a little bit once the postseason hits and teams can really kind of dial in and say, "We dare you to beat us."
Yeah, well, you start wearing down. You wear down quicker as you get older. It'll be very interesting to see if he can handle the cold weather in Pittsburgh. But with that being said, we do got to talk about the NFC, where the Lions and the Eagles are the 2 clear favorites at the top. Who could challenge them for that Super Bowl spot? It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by IceShaker. All right, if you're like me, your holiday shopping list is, let's say, probably far from complete. Well, if that's the case, I've got the perfect gift for passionate sports fans in your life. Perhaps you've heard of IceShaker. IceShaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and MLB, and will make the ideal gift. It was created and used by the Gronkowski brothers. IceShakers has sold over 1 million bottles. They have changed the game with workout bottles, and this is a gift that you have been looking for. Make sure that you go to IceShaker.com right now. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to save 25% off your order. It's kitchen-grade stainless steel bottles. They won't absorb odors like plastic bottles do. They have a patented twist in agitator that breaks up powders. It's silent when you shake it as well, not like those annoying metal balls. The agitator can work as a strainer as well. I like to put a little bit of lemon in mind. It's absolutely fantastic. Order your team branded bottles today at IceShaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off your order. IceShakers, show your support for your teams with the best branded workout bottles on the market. That's IceShakers. Also want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy, whether it be football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports. Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. Here's why you need to check it out. You can win now up to wait, what is that, Prize? 200 times your money now on Prize Picks? That is ridiculous. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30 million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. You just pick 2 to 6 players, say whether they're going to do more or less. And this week, looking at maybe Travis Kelce to go over 70 receiving yards, Lamar Jackson to throw more than 250 yards. It's quick, simple, and so much fun. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. It's Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about our dark horses in the AFC outside of the 2 favorites. Now we go outside the 2 favorites in the NFC. Lauren's got a great one that makes a ton of sense. I'm going to give you one that's not even technically in the playoffs right now. So, Lauren, who is your dark horse in the NFC that you think has a shot to make it to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I hope my Locked On Bears listeners won't hear me say nice things about the Green Bay Packers, but to me, they're a team that not that you should 100% trust them, but that they are volatile enough. They have the ceiling there 100%. And if they can just sort of line it up right and hit everything the way it needs to in the playoffs, they're a team that can get hot and take off.
Yeah, I could see them. They were my Super Bowl pick before the year. I think we've seen them make stupid young mistakes. They are the youngest roster in the NFL, and it has showed up in good ways and bad ways. But I think what they have to worry about right now is not taking a step back. With the seeding in the NFC, there's not a lot of room for them to move up or improve in this last month. And that's something that Peter Bukowski is watching from Locked On Packers, is how they operate this last month with not a lot to gain.
The Packers are not winning the NFC North. And after that, their magic number to get into the playoffs is probably 1. If they go 10-7, that's probably going to be good enough to get them into the postseason. Now, the 49ers win, the Rams win, and so they're certainly making this interesting, and that's good for the Packers in this way. They need to use the next month as a tune-up for the postseason.
Do you agree with Pete on that? And what are you maybe looking for them to make you feel confident in your choice?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just about ironing some of these things out, right? It's having so much inexperience, or I guess such a lack of experience in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That, not that they're all rookies or anything, but guys just need to rep these things together 1,000 times so it's so natural and there's no miscommunication and everybody knows exactly what they're going to do. So the more you can put them through this and try and test out different situations where maybe you don't have as much stakes in terms of okay, if we lose this game, no big deal, but doesn't that give you a little bit more freedom to then try some different things and push the envelope a little bit and say, let's iron out some of the stuff now before the playoffs when the games will really matter again. Not that you treat it exactly like the preseason, but that kind of idea, right? Of, okay, let's have a little fun with it and work through the mistakes now so that you aren't making them as much when you get to the big games.
Yeah, it does give you an opportunity to maybe try some things, and maybe you look forward to some of the matchups you might have in the playoffs, try certain plays, try certain philosophies, see if your team can actually do those certain things. That is something that they could do. I like the Packers, and like I said, they were my Super Bowl pick, so I still obviously believe the Packers can go on a hot run. They have the talent to do it if they have some bounces go their way and they don't make those young mistakes that they're prone to. But I'm going to go with the old dog for my pick. I'm going to go with the only team in the NFL right now that really knows what it feels like to win a Super Bowl. And that's the Los Angeles Rams. And look, The Rams may technically not be in the playoffs right now because they aren't leading the NFC West at this time. But I think the Rams can make a push, and they're set up based on the schedule to do exactly that. And Locked On Sports Los Angeles talked about that this week.
You can lose one of the next two against the Niners or the Jets. You got 2 road games at San Francisco, at the Jets, and then you go Cardinals, Seahawks. You can lose one of those 2 games against the Niners or Jets, in my opinion. Because if you're 8-7, going into Cardinals and Seahawks the final 2 weeks, of course you got to win those 2 games. You'd be 10-7. Seahawks are going to lose that game to us. I'm telling you right now, we're winning that game, right? And so that makes loss number 6 for them. Now, where does loss number 7 for the Seahawks come? Let's see what the remaining schedule is. Oh, yeah. In case you forgot, they got the Packers and the Vikings and the Bears. They're losing one of their next 2 against the Packers or Vikings. Duh. Come on now, please. So you lose one of those 2, you lose to the Rams. You got 7 losses. We've got 7 losses. Right? It's up there for anybody to take.
So that's my guy, Gavin Carlson, and he makes an excellent point. I do believe that the Seahawks will lose one of the next 2 games against the Packers and the Vikings. They'll lose one of those games. And then you look at their division record. Right now, they're 3-2. So if they lose to the Rams, that means that they're 3-3 in the division. The Rams, on the other hand, are 2-1 in the division right now. So like he was saying, even if they lose to San Francisco as their 1 loss in the next 2 games, they get to play the Cardinals and the Seahawks there at the end, and they can win those 2 games and beat the Seahawks outright with the division tiebreaker being 4-2 over 3-3. So the Rams are perfectly in there, and I trust Matthew Stafford. I trust Sean McVay. I trust that offense, and what wins at the end of the day is pass rush. And they got some really, really good pass rushers, especially their 2 rookies, Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk. Like, I think that the Rams team, out of all of the teams outside of the Packers, I'll grant you that. I'm obviously on that train with you. Whereas I take the Steelers over the Ravens, honestly. But I agree, Packers. But if you're looking for a second team, I know I'm off the board here, but the Los Angeles Rams are the team that I actually believe in that can make that push.
They feel to me like a team that plays up to their level of competition of the opponent and also sometimes plays down. But when you get in the playoffs, a lot
of those guys have won a Super Bowl, so it's hard for them to get up for just, a regular game.
Exactly. So that's where it's like, okay, what scares me is that, okay, then do they play down to the 49ers and Jets and risk missing the playoffs? But if they get in, they're going to play up to every opponent. I mean, that's how you beat a team like the Bills. Like, they just come out with a level of energy there, and Puka Nacua makes incredible catches because they're fired up for it.
Yeah, I agree with you. That they have that high-end potential. They can beat anybody. They can lose to anybody a lot too. But I think that's why this scenario makes me so confident that they're going to get in. They're going to find a way because they don't even have to play their best the entire way out, and they still can end up with a very reasonable path on top at the end. So they just can't lose 2 of those division games. They just can't do that, and then they would be in real trouble. But I think that they're going to find a way to sneak in, and that's kind of my dark horse in the NFC that's way off the board. But with that being said, Dallas Cowboys somehow, some way, find a ridiculous way to blow the game against the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Football. We're going to talk about that, but the reality is both of these teams' seasons are completely over. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the final month of the NFL regular season. Sad to say that, but it is the truth. On FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So here's what happens. You get a hunch in the middle of a game. You open up the FanDuel Sportsbook app. You can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Lauren, we're going to cap off today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. We talked about our dark horse Super Bowl candidates. Dark horse is maybe a strong term for, some of the better teams, but at the end of the day, there are two clear favorites in each conference. We want to talk about the people outside of those. So fun conversations there. We each picked our teams. Be curious to see what you guys think are the two teams. So it's definitely up for debate. But what's not up for debate is that the Cincinnati Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys seasons are over. They are over. It's a disappointment for both teams, but the disappointment feels even worse when you do what the Cowboys did on Monday Night Football, dropping a blocked punt and giving the ball back to the Bengals. And my guy, Landon McCool, Locked On Cowboys, had to break it all down.
Solid defensive play overlooked as the Cowboys lose in heartbreakingly familiar fashion. Hi, I'm Landon McCool at the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and the Cowboys were in the latter part of the fourth quarter, tied with the Bengals, as the Bengals were about to punt the ball away to give the Cowboys the ball with about 2 minutes left to go. All they had to do was run the ball out a little bit, potentially kick a field goal, and they were going to win this game. And then heartbreak struck as Nick Vigil blocked the punt, which is not the problem, but unfortunately a Cowboys defensive back touches the ball after the blocked punt and was unable to gain control of it. Bengals recover, and not only were they able to run the clock out, they scored a long touchdown to Chase to boot to make the final score 27-20 Bengals. The Cowboys able to snatch a loss out of the jaws of victory. There's lots to unpack here. Make sure you check us out all week on the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
I mean, I can't tell you the last time I saw something like that, Lauren, where the punt gets blocked and try to recover and give it back. And it's just like, from the moment that happened, you knew that the Cowboys were doomed.
It just kind of fits how their season has gone, right? I mean, it's like you almost were kind of waiting for how are they going to figure out a way to blow this one, and it's not lost on me there that Landon said wasted an otherwise good performance from the Cowboys defense, which it was, but it's funny that giving up 20 points through the first three quarters is like a really solid, good defensive day for them because they're used to giving up 25, 30 points a game, and like 20 is like, man, this was going great for this Dallas defense. Like right. The stage pretty nicely for 370 yards to Joe Burrow and 3 touchdowns was a good day at the office for this Cowboys defense.
Yeah, that is pretty funny when you think about it. But here's what I will say. And I know that, I mean, it's going to be considered a hot take, and that's fine. But I think the Dallas Cowboys should keep Mike McCarthy.
Whoa.
I think that there's a lot of teams out there who are ready to switch coaches all the time and find something better. But I don't think he's a bad coach. And I think the way the Cowboys have played, they won their 2 games before this. Then a lot of teams would be dead with their backup quarterback. But Cooper Rush comes in, and he's doing all right. He's doing all right. And I think a lot of that credit needs to go to Mike McCarthy. So I think that I know that they're going to be clamoring for change in Dallas, but I just don't think that Mike McCarthy is one of the worst football coaches in the NFL. And I think if the Cowboys were smart, unless they have a clear upgrade available, unless they're getting Ben Johnson, they get a Mike Vrabel. Like, I don't see a lot of great candidates out there. They're going to be better than Mike McCarthy.
But so, I mean, do you change coordinators? Like, do you fire Mike Zimmer, let him pick another defensive coordinator, or like Brian Schottenheimer on offense? Like, it feels like there has to be some sort of accountability of like, hey, this season wasn't good enough, but that doesn't mean fire Mike McCarthy. But I mean, you let him make another, because he picked, Dan Quinn did good down there, and I guess he kind of chose to move on from the guy who went to the Chargers. I can't think of his name, the lefty quarterback from Boise State, Kellen Moore. And like, he has had good coordinators there, but it doesn't feel like the rest of the coaching staff is doing a great job there either. So did you let him pick another staff and then give him even more time, and what do you do with Dak then? It's a lot of mess to clean up there, and it feels like a clean start, a clean reset can kind of just give them a fresh direction.
But to me, it's not going to be a clean restart. It's going to be a reboot, because you're not getting rid of Dak Prescott. I don't think that's not happening. And you just signed CeeDee Lamb, and you need to get Micah Parsons on the books. And I feel like I just feel like they could do a lot worse, and a lot went wrong this year, things like this. And with the Dak Prescott injury, I think you could make the case that you give him a 1-year extension and you give him next year to try it. And then after you get through another year, like, you're not going to fundamentally change the way the team is built this year, but maybe after next year, you could actually consider that and then do the clean slate, clean break off. Like, with that being said, on the Cincinnati Bengals side, it's just sad that they're wasting this year from Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
It's hard to watch. It feels like it's just one big bummer over there pretty much all the time, doesn't it? Like, you see the you want this to be better, and yet they need a blocked punt to be recovered to secure a win against the Cowboys team that you'd think, with Joe Burrow playing so well, you should have been able to, maybe not blow out, but at least firmly control throughout that game.
But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. Stay safe out there.